So first of all, a good Erev Shabbos to everyone, and a good Chodesh Nisan.
Thanks.
I want to begin because we are in a time of challenge and a time where there are Eden that need, and also not Eden for that matter, that need our refuah shlema b'kreva. So let the learning and our discussions here discuss all those that need a complete and full recovery, a refuah shlema b'kreva, and b'ramache varim and shasa gidim. And as the Rebbe would always say, in ha'efin is lechatchil le'osim alecha, like it never happened. And for the rest of us, the Eibishter should be protect and prevent any of this virus. And we should get out of this matzav as soon as possible, and be able to march into Chodesh Nisan and to Peisach and to the Geula, the Shleimus, the way it was always meant to be. So let me just begin with that. This officially is for Bochrim, but the truth is that Rebbe said that we're all Tmimim. Even those that went out of Temchet Tmimim many years ago. Atomim is Kedusha Le'zozim Kema. Means it's something that is permanent. It's not a temporary thing. So even if you're 80, 90 years old, or whatever age you are, the passion and the connection that a Bocher, that a Tomim makes when he was in Temchet Tmimim, as being in the Rebbe's yeshiva, is something that remains with you forever. So whoever's listening to this, whether it's a bocher that's right now presently actually an actual bocher in yeshiva, or it's someone who's technically not in yeshiva, but we still all have that tomim inside of us. Remember when the Rebbe said it, the 80 years Shmeinim Shana from Temchet Mimim, Tofshin Lamed Zayin, was the whole sikha that Rebbe gave us. Now today's Beis Nissan. Beis Nissan, as we know, is the stalkus of the Rebbe Rashab 100 years ago. Mamish today, Tofresh Pei, Tofshin Pei, 1920-2020. It's also, as the Rebbe emphasizes, the first day of the Rebbe Friedrich Rebbe's Nesius, because of Ba Hashemesh v'Zorach Hashemesh. The sun sets, immediately the sun rises. So it's a Meir Shana, it's a big day. It's also closer even to us. It's also 70 years this year, Shnas Hashivim from Tofshin Yud, because the Friedrich Rebbe had the leadership for 30 years. So you add 30 plus 70, you have 100 years. The Rebbe became the Rebbe, Tofshin Yud. So it's an extraordinary year in every possible way, Tofshin Pei. Who would have imagined that we'd be in such a matzav right here, days before Pesach, in the Chodesh HaGeula, having to not be able to go to shul, not be able to go to yeshiva, have to stay in our homes, and be farbrengen virtually like this. No one would imagine such a thing in the 21st century. But this is the matzav in which we're in. So I want to talk about that, not just in an abstract way. You know, what did the Rebbe expect of us? What does the Rebbe expect of us in a time like this? You know, there's some people who are very fearful, and they're scared. There's health issues. There's parnasa issues. The whole world is shaking. I mean, it's the first time ever in history, definitely in our lifetime, 8 billion people have been affected. And not just affected in health, economy, schools, plans. There's almost nothing that has not been impacted by what's going on. So there's no shaila that we, as chassidim, and especially tmimim, talmidim, are soldiers of the Rebbe, we have a job to do now. We can't just be running home and just staying home and saying, "Hey, what's going to be?" That's not the approach. The Rebbe once, Chief Rabbi Lau, the old Chief Rabbi Lau, once, he told me the story. It's a famous story. He came to the Rebbe in Tofshin Lamed Daled, right after the Yom Kippur Milchama. And he came to the Rebbe and he told the Rebbe, the Rebbe asked him rather, what's the matzav ruach in Eretz Yisrael? So it was not a good matzav ruach. People were in a very bad place because by the 6-day war, it was euphoric. It was miracles. There were very few casualties, Baruch Hashem. But by the Yom Kippur war, there was, without going into details, a lot of arrogance, a lot of mistakes were made, and thousands of nefoshes fell. So the matzav ruach was very, very depressed. So he told the Rebbe that the Eden sagen, was wird sein? Or in Hebrew, ma yiyeh, was wird sein? What's going to be? And he says the Rebbe grabbed his wrist like this. That's what he says. And the Rebbe said to him, Rabbi Lau, Rav Lau, bei Eden fragt man nicht, was wird sein. Man fragt, was geht man tun? We don't ask ma yiyeh, we ask ma naseh. We don't say what is going to be. That's a victim ask what's going to be. A person, a chassid, doesn't ask what's going to be. You're going to ask, what are we going to do? The Rebbe in many letters says, in times of tzarus, whether it was the Holocaust or other things, we don't know why Hashem does certain things. But we ask not why, and we don't say what's going to be. You know what? We ask one question: what are we going to do? So I want to say to all of you and to myself and to everyone, this is what we were trained for. Rachmana litzlan, no one asked for this matzav. And now that we're here, we were trained to rise to the occasion and not just survive, but to show a living example, a dugma chaya, what it means to be a chassid, what it means to be the Rebbe's a mensch, by being more loving, more kind. They're telling us to socially distant. So then, on a social, physical way, we're distant. The Alter Rebbe says in Tanya Perek Lamed Beis, the gufim are separate, but the neshama is one. So now is the time. Maybe you should mute whoever is there. Now is the time to strengthen our connection with each other. Look, we would never have even met. Due to this matzav, we're sitting now Farbrengen, a virtual Farbrengen, thanks to technology. And the kavanah is to become more connected, to show more kindness at home, to your family, to your friends, virtually in whatever possible way. And to show a dugma that we're here to lead the way, that even in a matzav like this, we can show that we become stronger people. Look, we're going now to Peisach. What's one of the first psukim in Pasha Shmeis? It says, Kashayana Esom ken yirbe v'chen yifritz. As they were oppressed, the Jews, in direct proportion, they flourished and they thrived. It doesn't say they just survived. It doesn't say they just protected themselves and they lived. Yirbe v'yifritz. Every time there was a challenge by the Rebbe addressed the challenge, but at the same time, always added, when there's more cheshach, you have to add more er. When there's more pirud, you have to add more achdus. So we have a tremendous opportunity now to demonstrate what we need to do. Now I say this even stronger because it's Beis Nissan. So you all know, there's a famous Simcha from the Rebbe Rashab, who is the Miyasir of Temchet Mimim. He founded Temchet Mimim Lubavitch, Tofresh Nun Zayin. That's in 1897. A few years after that, he said a very famous Sikha in Tofresh Samachal of Simchas Teda. Just actually, people point out it's like a year before the Rebbe was born. It's called the Sikha Kol HaYetzel Melchemes Beis David. And he said it to the Bochrim of Temchet Mimim. And the Rebbe would koch sich a lot in this Sikha. I have the Sikha in front of me. And why? Because I was reading it this morning, and I realized there are mamish directives that in Negev, even such as man, such a time. So bekitzer. So I suggest and encourage you all to read the Sikha. It's printed in many places. I'm looking in Sefer HaSichos Tovshin Beis from the Frierdiker Rebbe. It's printed on page 141. But it's in other places as well. And the Rebbe Rashab spoke to the Bochum, which means he speaks to each one of us. This is what the Rebbe Rashab, whose histalkus was 100 years ago. What did he say? He said, Beis David goes on Mashiach. David, Melech Mashiach, Beis David. That's what he says. And for the Gula to come, there's going to have to be a Mulchama. But it's not Chas v'Sholem, a physical Mulchama, it's a Ruchnisdik Mulchama. And there'll be, the soldiers will be the Bochrim that are educated in Temchet Mimim. Their job is to lead this Mulchama Ruchnius to bring Mashiach. How do we bring Mashiach? He says, through Yefutzu Meinesecha Chutza. When the Baal Shem Tov asked Mashiach, when will you come? He said, K'shirfutzu Meinesecha Chutza, when the well springs will spread outward. I'm just summing up the Sikh. So there's Mulchamas. And the Rebbe Rashab says there'll be two Mulchamas, two main Mulchamas. There'll be two Mulchamas. One will be a Mulchama that people will Chorfu Evei Hashem. That's the first Mulchama. Chorfu Eivecha Hashem. People who will deny that there's an Eibishter and so on. You know, just a few weeks ago, I just was reading, just a few weeks ago, when the world was so-called stable, for many people, the Eibishter was irrelevant. Today, everybody, Pe'echot, says one thing: we are not in control. Everybody thought they were in control. We were in control of our money. We were in control of our businesses. We were in control of our schools. Everybody's plans have been changed. Travel plans, Peisach plans. One thing is for sure, we are not in control. But what the Rebbe always tells us, you're not in control about what's going on outside of you, but you're completely in control of what's going on inside of you. Our attitude. That we ask, what are we going to do? So the Rebbe Rashab says, we have to lead the way. Now think for a moment in an army, a battle, even a Gashmizdik war. You're fighting a war, everything is going well. But then there's a setback. An enemy attacks, or there's an epidemic, there's a magefa. So there's three types of approaches you find. Some people right away, I'm out of here. It was good when it was a party, I'm here, but as soon as there's a challenge, I'm out of here. Other people say, doesn't matter, challenge, just march ahead. Sakana ahead, sakana ahin. Doesn't matter if there's a sakana, you have to have betach. Both those approaches are inaccurate. The Rebbe taught us like this. When there's a Muhammad, what does the commander-in-chief say? No. Nobody's backing out. The Rebbe told us Mashiach is coming. That is never going to change. There's a setback. There's a Helam, a Hester. There was Gimel Tam. Now there's this Matzav. This doesn't mean anything changed. It means we have to adjust. What do? You don't just run in sakana. If Rabbanim and medical authorities say you have to stay home, you stay home. There's entire halachas. If you look in the Alter Rebbe's Hilchas Shmiras Haguf, he says when there's a plague, when there's a dever, be'ir, you have to stay home because you can't affect others. That doesn't mean that we're afraid. It means that's what the Eibishter wants right now. Like we're going to read the Pasuk, what happened the night of Pesach. There was the Makas Pcheres, there was an epidemic, a pandemic, a plague, attacking. Ein bayis beloy mess in the Mitzrayim. The Eibishter told Moshe to tell the Eden, Va'atem le'seitzu ish mepesach beisei ad beker. What do you think the Jews were doing in their house? You think they were cowering in fear and they were scared? No. They were celebrating Pesach. V'achaltem zevach. They brought a carbon Pesach. They were with their families. They were the greatest Simcha because they knew that tomorrow we're marching out of this place. The Geula came the next day, the night of Pesach, that first night was a Simcha. But the same Eibishter said, stay home. Do not go outside. There's a time for everything. So I want to just continue. So the Rebbe Rashab says there's a time of Mulchama. But he says very clearly, the Mulchama is a Mulchama Ruchnius. These words he uses, very strong words. He says the Mulchama from the Bachrim, just want to read it inside. He says, is lei b'chayil v'lei b'keyach ki im beruchi. Says chayil and keyach, he says, is musar and teichacha. Our war is not with gvura. We don't attack people. We don't say musar to people. It's all with chesed. Ruchi, das is primis hateirech, sidis, asaga lekis, v'naveda shebelev. And the Rebbe Rashab continues that the war that we have to fight is a war of light. We have to bring elukus. That even when there's a setback and even when there's a challenge, we march ahead in the ways the Eibishter said we should march. The same Eibishter that said that 2 weeks ago you should go to shul, now he's saying through Balei Teira and through Yirapi and through Reifim, the Aved is at home. That's not meant to be depressing. That's Evil the Eibishter. We don't know why. We don't like it, but that's how Evil it. So we have to now use this opportunity to become even stronger soldiers, Yetzel Melchamas Beis David, and fight this Melchama. Then there goes on the second stage of the Melchama. He says, "Is Shemrei Teira Mitzvahs?" No problem. They keep Teira Mitzvahs. You know what? Kalted hate. It's all apathetic. It means, I do it. Mashiach will come one day. It's lacking passion. What does Chassidus come to do? What do the Yetzel Melchamas Beis David do? They increase passion and chayis. Now what? That you just don't do mitzvahs anoshim u'lamod. You don't do mechanical mitzvahs. It's always filled with apnimius. No, we were trained that we don't just do Yiddishkeit. We do with a chayis. We chayis for ourselves, chayis with others. And today there's tremendous opportunities that unfortunately do not exist now, till now. People are in their homes. People are receptive. Many people are very, very fearful, and they're waiting for a good word. Each one of us, we can't go on Mivtzoyim in the regular way, so maybe you get on the phone, you find your contacts, you share a message on whatever the yeshivas allow you to use. I'm not going to give you now all the different methods on social media and so on. I'm sure you all know all these methods. But you use it for Kedusha, for spreading a vort of Chassidus. I'll just give you an example. In the last 2 weeks, this is how I was trained. I also had some of the symptoms, to be very honest. Thank God I'm over with it. I'm stuck home. All my shiurim, everything I've been doing, I can't do on a regular basis. But the Rebbe told us we have to increase more. So I've been non-stop giving classes online. Just a few days ago, I started a new project called Your Daily Spiritual Antidote. I do like a 3-minute video of a message of chizuk, a message about the neshama, that in time like this, when they say social distancing, you have to make your neshama's soul has to be closer. I'm not saying that it's a great product, I think, and you can use it, you could pass it on to others. My point is, we have to be creative. We have to find ways to bring Torah and Chassidus and the Rebbe's message. And for ourselves, we need to know, Mashiach is right at the threshold. That's what the Rebbe told us. The fact that there's a setback doesn't mean that we're far away from it, God forbid. Maybe we needed a wake-up call. The whole world is busy doing business as usual, including us. And maybe the Eibishter wanted a wake-up call. You want a little reminder who's in control. You think it's Wall Street. You think it's your summer plans. You think it's your travel plans. No. Now, Kemuvan, we would have wanted it should be B'chesed Barachamim and shouldn't come with any Agmas Nefesh. And I'm not justifying why it happened. But as I said before, the Rebbe says to us, we don't ask why. We don't ask what's going to happen. We ask, what are we going to do? We are leaders. They say there are 3 types of people. People who make things happen, people who watch things happen, and people who ask, what happened? The Rebbe taught us to make things happen. I'll share a personal story. When I was bar mitzvah, it's Tovshin Lamed. It was the year, the Shnas HaEsim, the Rebbe, then 20 years of the Rebbe's Nesius. So, your bar mitzvah, what do? When I was a kid in Crown Heights, so when the Rebbe would dance Simcha Steda, the children would be under the tables. So when the Rebbe danced by that kofis, we were low down on the ground, under the table, and the Rebbe would bend down the Sefer Torah, we'd kiss it. Now I became a big bar mitzvah bocher. Okay, so they stuck a big hat on my head. I said a maimer I didn't understand, and I thought I was a godel. So I'm not a child going to sit under the table anymore. So I went with one of my uncles and I said, you know what, I'll stand in the bleachers. I stood near the Oren Kodesh. And I was so proud. I'm now an adult. Okay, comes Hakofis. After the first Hakofah, the Rebbe finishes the Hakofah. The Rebbe turns to my father and says to him, where's your son? He always would dance with us here. So my father proudly points to me standing there with his big hat on my ears. And, I'm beaming, and the Rebbe looks at me. And the Rebbe tells my father with a smile, Nu, a spectator. He also became a spectator. We danced down here. So Kemuva and I went right back down on the ground. And all the Chassidish Shabachim then that heard the story, they didn't stand in the bleachers ever again. Because the Rebbe said, these are spectators. Now Kemuva, the Rebbe was not criticizing. But what is the Rebbe's message? The Rebbe's message, we're not spectators. We're not here to watch others play a game. We are here to be players. Kol ha'yetzel Mechames Beis David means you're soldiers. I always wondered the Rebbe would encourage even young boys, young girls, to go on Mivtzoyim. Even if you're 12 years old, 13 years old, 14 years old. You could think, what's a 12-year-old going on Mivtzoyim to a big law firm or a big business? But through these type of commitments, we became leaders. We become leaders. And this is what is called upon us now, the Meitzim Mechames Beis David. But I want to read one more piece here, because this struck me. I didn't even realize it until I read it today. The Rebbe says, the Rebbe Rashab says, again, Me'eh Shana from Beis Nissan. What does the Rebbe Rashab say? He says that a soldier, has to be healthy. Let me just look this up 1 second. Amuzayna gesundheit. Ishat sova, a soldier must be healthy. Nicht nur soll nicht sein kein balmum. Not only that he should not be someone that's handicapped, nur soll seiner gesundin in seiner ramache voren v'shasa gidim. Because we know a soldier has to be fully healthy to be able to fight any battle. Weil ish sova bigdeo soll seiner ben chayil, bedev seiner gesundter. Azay in gashmis, umakolshkein in ruchnis. So I was thinking to myself, Mamish Abroche for our time. It's Meir Shana, 100 years from the Rebbe Rashab, and we know every word from a tzaddik lives on, and here you have it. The Rebbe Rashab saying, Dav Zayin Gesund, and goes on to speak about it. How to be Gesund Begashmius and Beruchnius. So we have a brocha for that as well. Now, I want to share with you a story. 100 years ago, as I said, was the stalkus of the Rebbe Rashab. And you know something? Interestingly, it was a magefa then. It was not coronavirus, it was called typhus. Typhus caused very high fever. Rahman al-Islam, a lot of people died from it. The Rebbe Rashab, unfortunately, the Eibishter took him that way. What happened? So in Ashkafta the Rebbe, we have the whole account that Brel Rivka writes up the whole parsha of what happened. After the Stalkus, so the Frierdiker Rebbe sat Shiva, of course, from Beis Nissan to Tes Nissan. That year, Beis Nissan was Motzei Shabbos, Vayikra. The Stalkus of the Rebbe Rashab was similar to the Alter Rebbe, Motzei Shabbos. And when the Frierdiker Rebbe stood up from Shiva, he said a Maimer Chassidus, because the Rebbe Rashab told him to say. A few weeks later, Rahman al-Islam, the Frierdiker Rebbe contracted typhus. And he was very high fever. He was in bed. The doctors were very frightened because it was mamash sakonis nefashos. Mamash amatzav like today. He had typhus. Very, very high fever. The doctors, some of them already gave up hope. The Chassidim were frantic. Why? Because here they just lost the Rebbe Rashab. One tragedy. They don't need another tragedy on their hands. So among the different things they did, they went to the Ragat Shover Gon. You all know the Ragat Shover. Rabbi Yosef Rosen. I think he lived in Leningrad then, I'm not sure. Maybe he was still in Dvinsk. Al Kapanim, he came from Chassidish family. He famously once said, when they asked him, why didn't you learn Chassidus? He says, because he had met the Tzemach Tzedek as a child, and Tzemach Tzedek gave him a bracha, Nigla. So he became a Gon Adir in Nigla. Now, Halavai, all of us should be as little Chassidus as his Nigla is quite Chassidish. So they came to the Ragat Shover, and they told him the Rebbe is now such a matzav, and they wanted some words of hope, a bracha. The Ragat Shover, in his classical way, you know what he told them? You got to hear this. Mind blowing. He told them, when Alpi Teira, when something is a mitzias and belongs in a certain domain, and you want to transform it to become a different type of mitzias, how do you do that? It's negei taka these days, actually. If you want to kasher an oven for Peisach, you can't just scrub it with water and soap. That maybe works for the coronavirus. What do you do? If you want to kasher something, you have to heat it up in a high temperature, not just red heat, white heat, until the white heat burns out the whole thing. A pitera, that's called a shini mitzias. You're not just cleaning it, you're transforming it. You're mahapich it. So a treif stove becomes kosher. A not kosher le Pesach stove becomes kosher le Pesach. So the Ragat Shover said, the Frierdiker Rebbe until now was the son of a Rebbe. He was the chassid of a Rebbe. But he wasn't a Rebbe. He has to go and become a new Metzias, a Rebbe. So therefore the typhus, which creates high fever, is like the high temperature that Alpitera transforms the Frierdiker Rebbe from chassid to Rebbe. That's what he said. So besides the fact that it was Amuna Pshuta, his basic faith, that he believed that the Frierdiker Rebbe will be healed, he gave the Chassidim such an insight. And Taka, what happened? This Frierdiker Rebbe was healed, and not only did he come back and he was as healthy as he was before, he was one of the, maybe in history, the greatest Baal Mesiras Nefesh. He took on the whole Bolshevik communist world, stood up against them, against all odds. We all know the story of Yud Beis Tammuz. The Frierdiker Rebbe refused to cooperate. He refused to work with them. He said, I will not cooperate. And it was at the threat of life. He could have been shot every moment. And he prevailed. It's a lesson, a historical lesson, how you deal with challenges. And what did the Frierdiker Rebbe say? We all know the story. Lulav. Who were the biggest oppressors of the Frierdiker Rebbe? Were people who were grandchildren of Chassidim. When they arrested the Frierdiker Rebbe, Lulav or Nachmanson said to the Frierdiker Rebbe, mein Seid hat getrogen, dein Seid ist Peklach, weil ich trogen dem Rebbe's Peklach. My grandfather carried your grandfather's bags. So I will carry your bags. He said, no. Your grandfather carried my grandfather's bags where my grandfather wanted to go. And you want to carry my bags where you want me to go. That not. Okay. He was arrested, tortured. Chmona Litzlan, the Frierdiker Rebbe refused to cooperate. He writes in his diary, you know what he calls his diary? Mesechta Gehenim, a tractate from hell, from Gehenim. And he writes how they hurt him. He refused to speak Russian. He spoke only Yiddish. He wanted his talis, his tefillin. So then Lulav pointed a gun to the Frierdiker Rebbe's head and said, the Rebbe, in Yiddish, mind you, he says, the Rebbe, this gun has changed many people's mind to cooperate. It's time to cooperate here. Frierdiker Rebbe looked at him, did not flinch, and said to him calmly, Die Tzatzke, this toy, called it a toy, can frighten someone that has one world and many gods, but not someone that has one God and many worlds, or two worlds. By you have many worlds. Every day you have another taiva. You have many gods, rather. Every moment another, but you have only one world, Elam Haza Gashmi. You can't frighten me. So you know what he said to the Frierdiker Rebbe Lulav? He said, Rebbe mevidzen vervet eisfirn. We'll see who will prevail. And the Frierdiker Rebbe looked at him again and said, yes, we will see who. Mevidzen ver vemen. We'll see who will prevail. A few weeks later, Lulav was shot, obviously. And the Frierdiker Rebbe miraculously came out. Tofresh Peisach, Yud Beis Tammuz. Ultimately came to Nazi Europe. Ultimately escaped that and came to America. 80 years ago. It's also a milestone. Because 10 years after Tofresh Pei, Tofshin. 20 years later. 20 years later, the Frierdiker Rebbe came to America. Tofshin, 1940. 10 years later, was the Istalkus of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and the Rebbe took over, and now we're 70 years later. What do we learn from all this? That there was a fire, there was a temperature, coronavirus, some people, God forbid, are getting fever. The Eibishter again should protect everybody from anything, and those that have it should be healed completely. But we learn from this that we don't know why it happens, but we have to learn lessons from it. Interestingly, the Eden in Mitzrayim that was celebrating Peisach is also compared to a high temperature. Kur HaBarzel. What made the Jewish people a powerful people? 210 years in Golus. 210 years of Tzoris. As I mentioned, Kasher, that ken yirbe v'chen yitzur, kasher yasreisam ken yirbe v'chen yifritz. The more they were oppressed, the more they flourished. We are here now, 3,800 years from Avram Avinu. We went through every tzara. And we not only survived, we became stronger. So I say to you, Bachrim, and to myself and to all of us, we are the Bachemes Beis David, and now is our time. I believe, without question, that we will never have an opportunity like this again. Nothing has ever happened, definitely not in our lifetime, that has affected 8 billion people. No one could have imagined it. And affected everything. Business, as I mentioned, travel, school, plans, you name it. So people are receptive. We are charged with a mission that we were given to be the soldiers, the ruchniistic soldiers, to bring ruchniis to people, to bring hope, to bring values, to bring commitment, and especially the shlichus that Rebbe gave us, to bring the geula. Now you have to do it be'efon hamiskabel in ways people can understand, but everyone is now asking. I can't tell you how many phone calls I've had the last few days. People say to me, life is out, I don't have where to go. I don't have a job. My job has lost my job. Even if I have a job, my business is closed now. What should I do? People are home. They're waiting for something. And we have what to teach them. It's never been so receptive. If you told me 2 months ago, if I called my people and I say, listen, let's all sit down and talk about who's in control. Is God in control or is Elam Haza in control? They'd say to me, come back after the summer, and then they'd push it off after Rosh Hashanah, and I'd still be waiting to get an appointment. If you said to somebody a month ago, they say, Elam Haza, it's nothing. We learn Chassidus. The whole physical world is nothing. Ayin ve'efes mamish. Why? Because there's a Dvar Hashem. Is Mechaya le'elam Hashem Dvar Chenivitzu b'shamayim every second. And Elam Haza is simply a helen v'hester. Ilu nitin reshus la'ayin lira, as the Alter Rebbe writes. If the eye could see the elokus that gives chayis to everything, the whole world would cease to be. So we all learn this Shayachet V'Amunah. Everybody learns it. We understand it. Eined Malvadi, all good. If you would tell this to somebody, and I tried, trust me, and they said to me, I remember I was in someone's office a few years ago, and I decided to teach him this piece of Shayachet V'Amunah. He happened to work in the world of finance. So he's looking at me with a smile on his face. He says, listen, very nice ideas that the world doesn't exist and it's only godliness. I understand what you're saying, but right now, the market just opened up and I have to deal with my finances. I said to him, the whole finances, I am ve'efes, it's nothing. He was a smart guy. He understood these ideas. He says, I understand. It's ayin ve'efes, but for me, it's not ayin ve'efes. For me, it's very much important. And if you want a donation from me, I have to make some money. So you go back and learn Shayachet V'Amunah, and it's very nice, and I'll support you, but I have to deal with the realities on the ground. And I bless you, God bless you, Rabbi Jacobson. You're a very spiritual guy. But you know what? I only know things that I can count. That's what he tells me. Okay. So because he's a friend of mine, I called him last week. I said to him, I remember a conversation we had a few years ago. You told me that Wall Street and the markets and all that. He starts laughing. He says, I should be crying. But I said to him, what do you think about it now? Is it also that way? He says, you may have a good point because I don't know how reliable these things are. My point that I'm saying is people are receptive and recognizing that Gashmis Ha'elam is not exactly how we thought. Everybody thought it's all figured out. We're going to celebrate, then we're going to make money, and we're going to travel and so on. The Eibishter gave us a rude awakening that you're not in control. But as I said before, we're in control of what's going on inside of us, in our neshamas. And we're controlled to be tmimim, to be soldiers, to fight the battle that has to be fought. So, some of you may say, listen, I'm just a young bacher. What do I know? I'm not a leader. I'm not a gon. I'm not a maskil, a avid, and I'm not a manig Yisrael. That's not the way the Rebbe trained us. Every one of us can make major change. First of all, the people you speak to, we all have people we can speak to. Secondly, we're now at home. Yesterday, I gave a class to another group, and one of them asked me, what do we do? And I get frustrated with my father and my mother and my parents, and we're out now. It's challenging enough as it was. Now we're 24/7 together. So my answer is very straightforward. The Rebbe taught us in such a challenge, Adarab, grow up, become a little more mature, and show a little more love to your parents. Is it frustrating? Sometimes it's going to be frustrating. You have a frustration, go into a private room, call a friend and vent. But this is the time that really, honestly, brings the best out of people, or God forbid, the worst. This is the time when you can shine, because people need it. Every one of us needs. I mean, here in Crown Heights, we have here a bunch of young people I know volunteering, going to homes of elderly people who can't go out to bring food for Shabbos, for this. Beautiful. You see such beauty. You see the simchas of chassidus now. My niece got married last week. Jacobson, married to Deitch from Columbus. And I couldn't go to the Kabbalah's Panim because of my matzav, but I went to the chuppah. I was outside, I stayed away, and even though the Simcha couldn't be in the hall, and all the hundreds of people couldn't come, the grandparents couldn't come, most of the family couldn't come. But the Simcha that I saw in the streets, the car going around, and you probably all saw it, people dancing from windows. So obviously we'd rather to be kishan kitikunim and everything should be smooth. You know what? We took for granted a lot of things. And now you appreciate it. Someone just told me yesterday, they said, I can't wait to be able to say good morning to the elevator man in my office building. I'm craving to just say some nice words. So thank God we have Zoom, we have technology, we can have a virtual Farbrengen and Chassidus She'idin, we can connect. But it's a big change. A lot of people are completely shaken up because everything we could rely on, you can't rely on. And tomorrow, what's tomorrow going to be? And what's going to be next week? Is it going to be 5 weeks? Is it going to be 5 days? Is it going to be 5 months? And the summer? I mean, it's so mind-boggling. But let's put it very simple. When Gashmias, you can't rely on Gashmias institutions and all the regular routine and plans, you know what you rely on? What's inside. And the people who have strong neshama, strong strength in neshama, can ride through this. It's not easy. Listen, 770 is closed. Shuls are closed here. No. By us, we have in the backyard, people are davening on the porches. We're all different porches. Last week, they asked me to give a drasha. So the first time I ever gave a drasha from a rooftop, you know, it was interesting. But I saw people come out, women, men, women, children from their homes. There's a craving for a deep connection now. In Tafshin Chavov, 100 years from the Tzemach Tzedek's Stalkus, Tafresh Chavov, Tafshin Chavov. The Rebbe Yud Gimel Nissen was his Stalkus, which is also coming up 2 days after Yud Aleph Nissen. So the Rebbe spoke a lot about the Tzemach Tzedek then. And the Tzemach Tzedek, he told a story. When the Tzemach Tzedek, in his life, he was busy with a lot of askonis in Petersburg. He had to go to Petersburg to do askonis. And it was a lot of times it was sakona, a danger. So the family said to him, to the Tzemach Tzedek, how could the Tzemach Tzedek put himself in danger? The Chassidim need him. He should send a shliach. You know, it was very dangerous times. He could get arrested, etc. Tzemach Tzedek said, Ich will empfern beloshen ha-Gemara. I will answer with the language of Gemara. I'll give you an answer, and then Iboye Sema. And if you want another answer. He said, the first answer he said, Sedah the kinder. The kids, the children. The Tzemach Tzedek had children. So if anything happens, Tzemach Tzedek, there's Mamala Mokim. The boy Sema, that's what he said. And if you want another answer, the Achdus von Chassidim will uns finden zu Mashiachen. Achdus von Chassidim. The Rebbe Tofshin Chavov, you have to hear this, unbelievable. The Rebbe said something, very rare you hear this from the Rebbe. The Rebbe said, Heint is the erste Rempfer, is doch die Kinder sein nicht da. The Rebbe was hinting that he didn't have children. Is bei Mele hat man nur die Boye sehen. A die Achdus von Chassidim will uns finden zu Mashiach. Now, we're here to talk only b'limud schus and only b'shvachim shel Yisrael. But the fact of the matter is, unfortunately, there are times we can take for granted things, and there can be things that are not complete achdus. The Rebbe writes in that settle that if Chassidim were ba'achdus, we'd already have the geula. I'm thinking to myself, here's an opportunity. They're telling us, as I said, social distancing. But it's the unbelievable opportunity for achdus. As I said, I'm saying hello to a bunch of people I never met before. We have tremendous opportunity to have such an achdus now, because precisely begashmis we can't have a vayakil begashmis, but we can have a vayakil beruchnis. So what stops us? Each one of us reaching out to a few new people we haven't spoken to in a while. Say hello, how are you? Can I be of any help? I mean, and it's not even forced. Tremendous opportunity for a thing that Rebbe told us, that achdus wird führen zu Mashiach. It's also coming up Yud Aleph Nissen, the Rebbe's birthday next week. Of course, the Rebbe's birthday by us is the closest thing of all, But all the Rabbeim are one, the Rebbe Rashab, the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Rebbe writes in Sikha, Miyad. Take it from Miyad. Miyad is Rosh Tevis, Menachem, Yosef and Yitzchok, and Dave Ber. The three Rabbeim, the Deir Chamishi, the Rebbe Rashab, Deir Shishi, the Frierdiker Rebbe, and Deir HaShvi, the Rebbe. And the Rebbe told us 70 years ago, 69 years ago, that we're marching toward the Geula. This is the Deir HaShvi, not because we chose it, not because we earned it, Mitzad HaTulda. That just like Moshe Rabbeinu was the seventh generation from Avram Avinu and brought the Shechina v'Shechanti b'Sechem, that's our job. To bring the Shechina l'mata masaret tfachim. That's our job. That was the Rebbe marching orders to us. I just saw, someone just sent me a zettel, two zettlach. I want to read it to you. It's negate to our time. Just give me a second here. Let me pull it up. You know, maybe I'll even share it on the screen if I could. It's too kisvei yad. The Rebbe writes, somebody wrote to the Rebbe that the matzav ruach is not in a good matzav ruach. Let me see if I could share this. Let me see if I could share this. Yeah. Can you all see it? You see the screen? Just nod with your head. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. So the Rebbe says, "B'negei lematzav rucha," b'negei to her matzav ruach, which means she was not in a good place. Hare nissen hu chedesh ha'geula mechol inyan hamafriya lechedes ba'avedas Hashem b'simcha. Month of Nisan is the month of redemption from everything that's mafriya. It's mafriya. Anything that blocks, that stops us, that impedes us from chedes, from freedom, and from serving Hashem b'simcha. Gleiblich. So here's one settle. If anybody of you want it, just email me and I'll be happy to share it. Okay. How do we get out of here? Here's a second settle. Let's see if I can share that. Do you see the second one now? Or not?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay. Keshenischadesh Rachmana litzlan cheli beguf. This is the Rebbe's Ksav Yad Kodesh. When a new cheli beguf, a new illness in the body, suddenly comes out of nowhere, sheloi hoya b'deir she'ovar, that didn't exist in a previous generation, which they're all saying coronavirus is mamish that. Muchrochim l'refuah chadosha. We must have a new healing, a new medicine. Alachas kama v'kama b'cheli hanefesh. And how much more so in cheli hanefesh, in an illness that connects to the soul. Shetzarech liyas la'fosha ba'araisa, there has to be increased learning and chidush in Torah. Shebalavoch imuchrech al pi azeir HaKodesh v'gam al pi nigla. That balavoch, even if there was no cheli, you need to do that. These are the two tzattlach I saw. Okay.
Which disease was the Rebbe talking about?
I don't know. The Rebbe doesn't say. The Rebbe doesn't say. Okay. So just Hashgacha Pratis came my way. Look, I want to say, I don't know, what is our time frame here? We go till Mashiach comes or till Shabbos comes? Okay.
Till Adlakas Neiras.
I think we'll stop a little before that. But let me say the following. Look, we're all in this together. We're in a matzav that is unprecedented. I honestly have been thinking about it today, all day, and yesterday, the day before. The Rebbe 25 years ago was Gimel Tammuz. 25 years was a Gimel Tammuz. Actually, you know what? Someone's saying L'chaim. I should say L'chaim Taka. I put my L'chaim aside. Where's my L'chaim? So I'll say a virtual L'chaim. L'chaim to all of you. So the Rebbe 25 years ago was Gimel Tammuz. 29 years ago, the Rebbe said the famous Sicha Chav Ches Nissen Tov Shinun Aleph. Ich geton als, tut als was ihr kennt. I'm not going to get into what happened the last 29 years, 25 years, but clearly the Gula didn't come yet. So I say to myself, we got in a way stuck in a place, business as usual. Business as usual. You know, we're all doing a lot of work, a lot of Mesiris Nefesh, Shluchim, Chassidim. But the fact is, we did not change, we did not move the needle. The Gula did not come. You look now, suddenly out of the blue, okay, I have my L'chaim. Let me first say a L'chaim to everybody. True L'chaim, I'm Ben Dektin. L'chaim to you all. Out of full sholem of a kreva to everyone. It should only be simchas. We should get out of this matzav and march to the Geula even before Peisach. L'chaim,
L'chaim.
L'chaim.
Let me go back to what I was saying. So then suddenly out of the blue, unexpected, no one had a clue where, what, when, this microbe called coronavirus, of all things, came out of nowhere and transformed the world. So again, I'm not explaining why it happened. We don't understand these things. People have died. People are in sakona. So I'm not making light of this and I'm not suggesting anything positive. But as the Rebbe said, what are we going to do? I say to myself, here we have on a platter, the whole world has been woken up. Everybody on earth recognizes that life is not regular. It's not business as usual. How could we not use this opportunity? I know everybody hopes it goes right back to normal, so to speak, as it was a month ago, 2 months ago, 3 months ago. It should go back in a healthy way to normal, but it shouldn't go back in an unhealthy way to normal. It's a tremendous wake-up call. And I think we have to look at ourselves and say, how are we going to use today? Today, what are you going to do today to bring the Geula a little closer? Who are you going to reach to? How are you going to speak to them? What are you going to commit to? This is not a time to lie back and say, oh, you know what, I can't do anything. It's a time to rise to the occasion and do exactly as the Rebbe had said 29 years ago. Tut als was ihr kennt. Do everything you can. Everybody is creative. Find creative ways. I just saw a website, people writing different creative things we can do now. Some people doing art programs, some people volunteer programs. Very interesting stuff. Why shouldn't we be doing something like that? And that we should recognize that this wake-up call, this opportunity, allows us to see truth, what is. What is real truth? It's not the stock market. It's not our travel plans. It's not the airplane industry. All that, it's elokus, it's godliness. That's what we were charged with. That's what the Meyetzel Mechemes Beis David was charged with. I want to share with you, people ask the question, what we can do to bring Mashiach? So here's an interesting letter from the Rebbe. A letter from the Rebbe. It's to dry cleaners. Can you imagine a dry cleaners? The Rebbe writes, everything's Ashgacha Pratis. Since you run a dry cleaners, what's the lesson of Eidos Hashem from cleaners? And the Rebbe writes in Igris Kedesh in the early volumes, I think Tafshin Yud Beis, and says, you buy a garment, you buy a Beged Chodesh, a new garment. For Peisach, hopefully we'll all get some new garment. You wear it once, you're excited, you wear it twice, 3 times, 4 times. At some point, it gets dirty, it gets wrinkled. And if you're somewhat a balabatish person, you can't wear shmatis. So at some point, what do? So you would think you throw it into the garbage. Says no, it comes the cleaners. And what does the cleaners do? You take the garment, you put it into water. And not just regular water, warm water. And then with chemicals, you get rid of the stains and the smudges and so on, the wrinkles. And then what do? You dry it, you put it under a press, a heavy press. And there you have, the garment is fresh like new. You take it home, you wear it again and again and again, as many times as possible. Says the Rebbe, what's the Eirah? Leididik. Neshama shenasata b'teherehi. We say every morning in davening. The neshama that you gave me is pure, like a new garment, a beged, a levush chadash. But then life takes over. We have disappointments. We're hurt. We're insulted. We lose things. We have setbacks. Everybody goes through life is going to have challenges. Nothing is always going smooth. We may have a loss, we may have a trauma. Rahman al-Islam. So you think the neshama now, okay, the neshama was once tahira, he was pure, but no longer. Says the Torah, no. You take the neshama, the lesson from cleaners. You immerse it in Torah. Ein mayim el Torah. Torah is compared to water. It refreshes you. When you learn, it refreshes you. You get nuchayis. You're learning, you stimulated your mind, your heart. But not just regular water. Warm water. Not kalte Wasser. Gleichgültigkeit, apathy, indifference. Warmkeit, warmth, passion. Warmkeit. And then you mix chemicals in it. What's a chemical? A mitzvah. Every mitzvah is another chemical, and it cleans out the dirt. The mitzvah of Shabbos, the mitzvah of kashrus, the mitzvah of mezuzah, of tefillin, stockah, and so on. But one more step. Then you take the neshama and you put it under a heavy press. What's a heavy press? Kabbalah seil malchus shamayim. Kabbalah seil, you accept the yoke of heaven. It's called eil. You feel the pressure, not in a bad way. You feel accountable to something greater than we are. We're accountable to the Eibishter. Yes, we're not accountable. We're not taking care of our own needs. We don't think about ourselves. We think, what can I do to make the world a better place? What extra mitzvah can I do? There's now a pandemic. What light can I add that's not here yet? And the Rebbe says, and your neshama comes like fresh. And you could do this repeated times through your whole lifetime. Beautiful lesson, right? Let me tell you what happened. After I read this letter, I was walking up Kingston Avenue from Empire Boulevard. And I noticed the dry cleaners on the right side. And then the next block, another cleaners. Almost every block in Kingston, Crown Heights has a cleaners. And I never looked at a cleaners the same way again. What did the Rebbe do? He took a regular cleaners that, we bring our clothing to, who thinks about it? And turned it into a lesson of Vedas Hashem. This is what Geula looks like. When people say, what will it look like? So the Rebbe, I remember, Achri Gedeshim Tovshin Nun Aleph. The Rebbe began the Farbrengen smiling. He said, there are people writing to me that they're afraid if Mashiach comes. Why they're afraid? Because they're going to lose everything. They built up a business, they built equity, they have money, they have connections, networks, reputations. Mashiach comes, it's all gone. And the Rebbe said, calm down. There's nothing to be afraid of. Mashiach is not going to take anything away. He's only going to add. And the Rebbe explained with the famous medrash, and we all quote it all the time, Geula, Geula. What's the difference between Golus and Geula? So you could think it's mamish min hakotza lakotza. In Golus it's one world, and Geula is a completely different world. Says no, Geula is made up of the same letters as Geula, Gimel, Vav, Lamed, Hey, with one Hisafe, an Aleph. The same world, the same birds, the same sky, the same dry cleaners, the same bakeries, the same pizza shops, ice cream shops. Everything is the same. But you see the Echad, the Aleph of Alufi Shalelam, the Aleph of Hashem. You see the Aleph of Achdus, Hashem Echad. You see a cleaners and you say, you know what? This is a lesson of Vedas Hashem. You look at your body, Mipsari Echzalakah. Even the coronavirus, by the way, has lessons in Avedas Hashem. If a virus can be so spread in a negative way, how much can a good thing spread in a good way? In Tofshin Yud Beis Tammuz, the Rebbe gave a whole lesson from Yena Machla, that in Klippa, it's Amalek. And in Gedusha, it's Akshon is the Gedusha. So everything has a lesson. What is Sachakul Geula, the Rambam says, especially in the first Kufa? He says, Lo ye'esa kol ha'elam el ladasas Hashem bolvad. There doesn't have to be a shinu in teva. You don't need the world to change. You don't need the sky, the sun to fall from the sky. It's the same world, but the consciousness of the person has changed. Instead of seeing Gashmis, a dry cleaner, as an end in itself to clean your clothing, you see it as a lesson of Vedas Hashem. B'chol derachecha da'ehu. I'll tell you another story. I was once invited to go to a medical conference. Now, I'm not a doctor. I'm not the son of a doctor. So why did I go? One doctor knew me. He was one of the organizers. And he wanted me to give a speech about medicine of the future. When Mashiach comes, what will be the role of healing and medicine? So I gave a ganze drasha. I'm not going to tell you the whole, I'll just tell you b'kitzur. I said the whole idea of death is an aberration. It's an anomaly. It means it's not a davar TV. Even though everyone thinks death is a davar TV. Look in Chumash. It says, had they not eaten from Eitz Hadas, they would have lived forever. That means it's the sin of Chet Eitz Hadas that caused Misa Be'elam. Why? Because think about the logic of it. A neshama is not like a car with gasoline that runs out of energy. It's not like the neshama is going to run out of energy at some point. Neshama is it's connected to Mokar HaChaim. A neshama is a neshama lekis. A nefesh lekis has divine energy. It never runs out of energy. So why do people die? If you put water in a cup, you put mashke in a cup like this, right? Unless there's evaporation, why should this mashke ever run out of this cup unless I drink it? It shouldn't. Only one exception. What happens if somebody makes a hole in the cup? Someone punctures it. So then it's going to spill out. The body is like an appliance. If it's a healthy appliance and it's completely intact, meaning a guf that's completely living up to what Hashem wants, so why should a neshama and guf ever have to separate? There's no need for illness, no need for viruses, there's no need for disease, no need for death. But since Chet Eitz Hadas caused a puncture in Gashmi Se'elam, that the world is not aligned with the way the Eibishter wants, so the body can't contain the neshama. At some point, the neshama is going to seep out because the body is going to break down and it will not be able to contain the neshama. What's Tchias HaMesim? When the world will be healed again, we'll fix all the holes. Tikkun Elam. Birurim. Once you fix it, then why should the neshama and guf not be together? That was the nekuda. It was a long drasha. I have to tell you, I'm not saying it to toot my horn. The doctors were they stood up, they liked it. But then one doctor asked a question. Listen to this. He said, if there won't be any more illness and disease and death, what are we doctors going to do? We'll be out of a job. So after the joke that we always make is maybe that's why doctors charge so much money for a long retirement, I said, Adarab, on the contrary, you know what you're going to do? The most beautiful possible thing, instead of fighting pain and suffering and disease and death, Rahman al-Islam, you will teach us the secrets of Hashem that are embedded in Mipsari Echzalakah. The human body was created by the Eibishter, not by human beings. It's God's machine. It has all kinds of secrets, but Tzelem Elakim. Every part of the human body teaches us about godliness. You doctors have an intimate understanding of physiology, of anatomy, of biology, of neurology, of the circulatory system. You'll be teaching us, just like the dry cleaners will teach us a lesson in Neshama and Shemasata B'Taherehi, you'll be teaching us lessons in godliness. You'll be our teachers. And physicists and cosmologists will teach us the mysteries of Svar Shamayim and Svar Oretz, the mysteries of Morabu Masecha Hashem, Mogadlu Masecha Hashem. Every drop of this world is a piece of godliness that can teach us about the Eibishter. The doctors, I have to tell you, were so overwhelmed, and they were mostly secular doctors. These were not necessarily Maiminim. They never heard about Mashiach before. My point is that from these two examples I gave, you can envision the Geula is not some crazy world. I remember when I was a child, our teacher told us in the 4th grade, we asked, what's going to happen when Mashiach comes? You know what he told us? Ice cream is going to grow on trees. I remember. And I said, wow, that's great. We love ice cream. It's free. It's going to grow on trees. I got a little older, and I came to realize, first of all, I don't know if it says it anywhere. It says, Madana Mitzim Koffer. I don't know. So I went to the rabbi. He's already in Elam Emes, to my teacher. I said to him, why'd you tell us this? Because I don't know if it's true. I don't think ice cream is going to grow on trees. He laughed. He said, I had to find something to make you excited. Mashiach's coming is the world that we know it, but in a true way. I can tell you this. The fact that now Elam Haza is shaking and people recognize that the Gashmis of this world doesn't have much substance and you can't rely on it, with all the negative part, the positive message is it's telling us that there's something higher. There's another reality. There's another power. You've all heard of probably Sir Moses Montefiore. Moses Montefiore lived from England. You know, you hear Montefiore Hospital in Eretz Yisrael, in Yerushalayim especially, you have a lot of things Montefiore built. Because he was a big vir, he was a very wealthy man, and he was a big Baal Tzedakah. He was once having a conversation with Queen Victoria from England. She was a very dignified queen, and she was close with him. She said, Sir Moses, tell me, how much are you worth? How much money do you have? Now, he was a rich man. So he said to her, Queen, I'll come back to you. I have to make a calculation. He came back. Listen to his answer. He said to her a number, whatever it was. She looks at him. She says, Sir Moses, you're mocking me. I personally know you have 100 times more than what you're saying. So he said, no, Your Majesty, you're making a mistake. You're looking at the money I have in my bank account, the money that I right now hold in my hand. That I don't own. That can be lost in a second. I could lose it in a bad investment. I could be confiscated. It could be stolen. You could take it away from me. A war could break out and I lose it all. So that's not money I own. It's money that I right now have under my hand. You asked me what I'm worth. You know what I'm worth? The money I gave away to tzedakah. The money I gave to charity. Because where I gave it will permanently always be there. I built a hospital. I built a yeshiva. I gave it to people who helped their lives to put them on their feet. That, no war and no ganef, no thief, and no bad investment and no epidemic can take away from me. Because that is permanently something that it's a tremendous lesson. That what you give is nitzchi. What you take is temporary. This is the Klal Chassidus teaches us. Everything in this world is what we call is mortal. Kol heva nifsad. I'm sure you learned this in Chassidus. Everything that exists deteriorates. Nothing lasts forever. Nothing. The Chassidus brings from a Maimer, from Rabbeinu Bechai, Tinuk, Mishanelad, Maskelis Yavish. When does a human being begin to age? Most people would say, my grandfather began to age 70, 80 years old. No, you don't begin to age when you're 80. You begin to age when you're day one. You just don't see it. Because you can't be 80 if you don't have 80 years before you. You don't see wrinkles. You don't see white hair and so on. So the Bechai is saying a very brilliant statement that Chassidus quotes a lot. That you want to see nitzchias, you don't look at the end, you look at the end, you don't look at the beginning. In the beginning, everything can look very powerful. But Chassidus brings the halacha about Nahoras HaMachazvin. You know, in certain halacha, you need mayim chayim. Certain things you can go into a mikveh, still water. But for example, tumas mes, if you need to purify it, you need mayim chayim. What's mayim chayim? A live spring. Like that is Izal's mikveh. It has to be connected to a live spring of water under the ground. So the halach in Parsha Porah, the Mishnah in Parsha Porah asks, what defines a live spring? So it says it has to be alive for 7 years. Because before 7 years, it may dry up. So Chassidus asks the question, but meanwhile, it's alive. It says, no, but if it dies in 7 years, it means even now it's not really alive. Everything in this world perishes, or definitely changes shape. Only one thing doesn't, ruchnis, the neshama. So in a time like this where we see how fragile and how the world is so not nitzchi, because nothing lasts. Look, all the plans, everything we had, and everyone knows now it's uncertain, but then now is the time to demonstrate to people, but you have something that's nitzchi. You know what it is? It's your soul. It's your belief system. It's Hashem. It's the Teira Mitzvah Siddu. It's the tzedakah you give, not what you take, but what you give. That will be forever. And we have now opportunity to bring such nitzchis. Now, why am I mentioning nitzchi? Because now 100 years from the Rebbe Rashab's Yahrzeit Istalkus, the Frierdiker Rebbe said a Maimer. He said a Maimer, Reishis Goyim HaMolek, or Zocher, what's the name of the Maimer? I think Reishis Goyim HaMolek. Tov Reish Pei. The last Maimer the Rebbe Rashab said, Purim, Tov Reish Pei, the Frierdiker Rebbe said, as I mentioned before, after Shiva. And I encourage you all to go to a Sikha, Vayikra Tovshin Mem Zayin. It's Mugadik Sikha, the Rebbe was Magia. Not only that, he instructed Likutei Sikhas not to publish the regular Likud that week, but to retranslate this Sikha into Hebrew, and it came out also in a Likud. And in that Sikha, the Rebbe talks about the Nitzchias of Nisim. Remember, it was right after Hey Tevis, and that was the whole Parsha. The Nitzchi is the eternity of Anosi, and his iskashus to Chassidim, to the people. And he says the Nitzchias is at kedei kach, that it even permeates the Gashmias of the Tzaddik. His room, his table, his chair. And the Frierdiker Rebbe brings in the Maimah that was delivered 100 years ago, today. I'm sorry, not today, a week from now. He brings a story that when he was 5 or 6 years old, Tofresh Mem Hey Mem Vov, the Frierdiker Rebbe was playing in the room, the Yechidus room where the Rebbe Marash used to give Yechidus. And he says, my father walked in, the Rebbe Rashab. So we're talking now 3 years after the Istalkus of the Rebbe Marash. And the Frierdiker Rebbe says his father wore a kapota and a gartel, and he stood by the table like he would stand in the days when the Rebbe Marash was Begashmi is there, and he spoke, his lips moved as if he was speaking. Ubacha harbe, and he cried much. Great, he cried a lot. And the Frierdiker Rebbe explains, what does this mean? Is because the tzaddik, because everything he does is not gashmis, it's ruchnis, chaim ruchnim. So even the table and the chair and the room all retain the kedusha nitzchis, kedusha leizazim kema of the elokus of that tzaddik. And he brings an example from Atzilus, that the kelim and Atzilus are nitzchi like the eir, because they're bottle. The Rebbe goes on and says, not just is it like Atzilus, it's not just a dugma of Atzilus, it's actually that's the fact. He goes on to say that we Chassidim, famous word that the Rebbe Rashab said, Ir gein himmel, the ksovim lo zechayich. Right before the Istalkus, he said, a day before, 2 days before, that I'm going to heaven and the writings I leave to you. What did he mean? That if you want a connection with the Rebbe, how he's in himmel, it's in this ksovim because he infused himself. Like the Eibishter, non nafshi ksovis yehovis, anoichi. The Eibishter embedded himself in the very words of Torah. The Rebbe lives in his words and in his gashmizdika utensils and table and chair. You got to read the Sikha, especially the end where the Rebbe says that each of us can walk into the Rebbe's room and cry with Simcha to our Father, just as it was then. So Nitzchias is such a powerful message today, because as I said, it's become very clear that Elam Haza is not Nitzchi. Everybody thought the party is not going to end. And we see this world is a very fragile world. It's a vulnerable world. You could have all the money in the world, as Montefiore said, it doesn't mean anything. It's what you give. It's what you built. It's what we're committed to. And this is the cloud that Chassidim always knew, and especially Bochrim. As much as you're going to do big things in your life, as big as it is, it has a gvul. You can do big things. But when you dedicate your life to a cause that's bigger than you, and that cause is nitzchi, that cause is the cause the Eibishter gave us, and gave us a shliach, Hashem, Isha Lekim, the Rebbe. When you commit to that cause, that's nitzchi. And when you're committed to nitzchi, you become an extension of nitzchis. That's the secret of the Jewish people. No nation ever understood that. That thousands of years later, we're still here. You know why? Because we never took ourselves seriously. We didn't think that our power was in money and in empires and in buildings and in homes and in comforts and luxuries. We always knew Beruchi, Lebe Keach, Lebe Chayal, Beruchi. When the Eden were Mitzrayim, we're going to say in 2 weeks, Vihi Sha'am Dalanu, Vihi. The promise the Eibishter made, the Haftocha, the Amunah we have, that is stronger, that lasts forever. Everything Gashmi's doesn't last forever. I once heard from a Holocaust survivor. His name was Eli Wiesel. So I once asked him a question. I was friendly, my father was friendly with him, so I remained friendly. I asked him, is it true that when the Eden marched to the gas chambers, they sang Ani Mamin Ba'amuna Shlema, B'Bias HaMashiach, Afal Pishis Mameya, B'chol Zeis Ani Mamin. And he said to me, where we were in the barracks, we didn't hear what was going on by the chambers. They didn't want us to know. But I can tell you, every night and every day, we heard Shema, we heard Kaddish, we heard a nigun here, a nigun there, sometimes Ani Mamin too. So I said, with all respect, I'm an American spoiled brat. I can't even imagine what that life was like. My father would tell me about Stalin, how they went to sleep 24/7 in fear. But we were born in America. What do we know about these things? So I said, explain to me. It sounds crazy. The Eibishter was hastir panai. He concealed himself in the worst possible way. The Jews had every right to be angry, had every right to complain. Why are they killing us? Because you're Amanifcher. Where are you? How could you forsake your children in this time where they're killing us only for one reason? Because we are your people. Ayeh lekechem. That's what the Saint Yisrael will say. How could you? And not only are Jews not complaining, they're singing God's praises. Ani Mamin, Kaddish, Iskal v'Iskal Shmei Rabba, Shema Yisrael. Doesn't make sense. And I asked with respect. And he said to me in his eloquent way, and I heard it from others as well, something that was, he said, you have to remember, first of all, Jews we know are insane. So that's not a chiddush. Okay. But besides that, you have to remember the Eden were not living in La La Land. They were not in denial. They were making a declaration, the only one they can make under the circumstances. You know what they were saying? You can take our lives, but you can't take our faith, our amunah. You can take our bodies, but you can't take our neshamas. And even if you take us, we will have our children. And our children will have children. And at the end of the day, we will prevail. Because we will march to the Geula one day. That was what they were saying. They were not living in denial. They were not going to go down. You could take our gashmis, you could take our bodies, our lives, but you can't take our beliefs. Never. That does not die. And what do you see happened? Today, 70, 80 years later, anyone that's a grandchild of a Nazi, they change their name, they hide their identity. They're ashamed, embarrassed, as they should be. And Eden, in Berlin, Chanukah, are lighting a menorah. You know where Yimach Shemai stood? And you have little boys running around with tzitzis, and men and women from Eden, Shem Shabbos. So yes, it took time. We lost a lot, 6 million people. The point I want to make is there's nitzchias by Eden. And it's not just an abstract concept you learn in Haskalah and Chassidus. Nitzchias is the things that, when they rise to occasion in times like this. That even you take away a little gashmis from us, you take away our shul from us, you take away our comfort, we find another way. We find another way to bring more air. We find another way to bring geula to the world. Obviously, prudently, you have to listen to doctors, you have to listen to our rabbanim. You don't do whatever you want. Because the same Eibishter told you have to listen to doctors. It's not because we believe in the doctors. The Eibishter feels those through doctors. Salman Gerari, the Chassid, once told the Rebbe, he asked the Rebbe a question. The Rebbe answered him, Katzas yedidim mevinim. Like the advice of experts that are friends that are experts. So he said to the Rebbe, I don't want an answer from yedidim mevinim. I want your answer. That's what he told the Rebbe. So the Rebbe said to him, Was ardir as ich will empfern durch yedidim mevinim? Why do you mind if I answer you through the friends that are experts? Azay the Torah, the Eibishter wants some things to go through derech hateva. It's the same Eibishter. It's Hashem Elokim, Eneid Movade. But there's different ways. Right now, the Eibishter wants us to do Aveda bebayis. Al teitzu, al leiseitzu ish me Peisach beisamad beker. That's what he wants. We understand it. We don't understand it. But in no way does it limit our ability to do great things. We have to find new ways to do it, creative ways. So we're in a tremendous matzav. And again, a matzav that no one asked for, and we want to get out of this Eis Tzara in every possible way. Again, everybody should be healed. But to say that we don't have something to learn from it, and something that Rambam says it's achzorius, it's cruel to say mikra nikris, it just happened. A catastrophe that affected so many people in so many ways. Chas v'sholem to say it's nothing. We have to look inside our hearts and souls and do whatever we can to rise to the occasion. I can go on and on. We have to have some limit. I want to just conclude with two short stories. I heard them recently, and I think they're very powerful stories for Zmanenu. Because remember, Gimel Tammuz to me is like the coronavirus. It's one of those mysteries and questions that we don't understand. What do we need it for? But it happened. So there's two stories I want to share. Actually, three stories, since we're on as a roll. When the Rebbe Marash was Nistalik, was Yud Gimel Tishrei. It was a few days before Sukkot. So there was no emails and no correspondence then. So it took a while till Chassidim found out of the loss of the Ptira, of the Istalkus. In Chernigov, news of the Istalkus came Hishayna Rabbi. Like a week later, Gimel Tishrei, yeah. The Rav in Chernigov was Rab Datz, Rab Datz Chen, Rab David Tzvi Chen. Big chassid, a big gone. When by Simcha Shmini Atzeres by Hakofis, a chassid, one of the chassidim, went over to him and told him the news. And the way he expressed it was this way. He said, the Rebbe is avek. The Rebbe left. Avek. You can imagine the effect it had on him. He fainted immediately. He fell on the ground. And nobody could revive him. They couldn't do anything. He was completely out. They were mamish desperate. So they went to his father's house. His father was named as a Peretzchein. He was already an older chassid. He was not so well. He couldn't come. But they took him. They carried him. He was the chassid, they say, that saw 6 Rabbeim in his lifetime. When he was a little child, he saw the Alter Rebbe. And before he passed away, he saw the Frierdiker Rebbe as a little child. 6 generations. Anyway, the Peretz comes to the shul, and he bends down to his son, Radatz. You know what he tells him? These words, he says, a Rebbe geht kemol nicht avek. A Rebbe never leaves. When the Radatz heard that, he was revived. So, two more stories I want to share in the same spirit. When the Tzemach Tzedek's Rebbetzin was in Stalik in Tofresh Chaf Aleph, Rebbetzin Chaim Mushke, her name was also Chaim Mushke, and it was also before the Tzemach Tzedek, 5 years earlier. So they say that Tzemach Tzedek went into a certain state. He didn't say Maimorim, he didn't give Yechidus, he didn't answer questions. Similar to the Rebbe, we saw by the Rebbe also a similar impact. And he said, "Ein melech b'lei matra nisa." There's no, a king is not a queen without a queen. The Chassidim tried to console him. It was not a good time. Anyway, news came one day that Tzemach Tzedek is going to say a Maimer Chassidus. Such a Simcha after whatever it was, months, weeks, I don't know how long it was. A Maimer Chassidus, Gevaldik. What happened? Everybody came to Lubavitch, all the Chassidim to hear a Maimer. Rab Hillel Paritcher, who was also not a young man any longer, by him, a Maimer Chassidus of the Rebbe, nothing greater. So what did Rabbi also came to Lubavitch? And they're all waiting in the Cheder, waiting for the Tzemach Tzedek to say Chassidus. But a half hour passes, an hour passes. Rabbi Hillel was not feeling well. He couldn't stand anymore, so he started walking out. As he's walking out of the room, all waiting for the Tzemach Tzedek, he hears 2 Yungalites say something that so shocked him and so disturbed him, he suddenly got a new surge of chayas, of life. One of the younger lights said to the other one, I don't know the exact language, but it was not a respectful language that you say in a Rebbe. He said, the Rebbe is efshen moresh chere, depressed, or the Rebbe is an expression that you don't say in a Rebbe. Rabbi Hillel heard that, he became so upset. He went over to the younger light and said to them these words. I'll tell you exactly as I heard them by the Farbrengen. By Farbrengen, one of the Chassidim from Rab Shmuel. Schwenzelach, Schwenzelach, Schwenzelach. Was meint ihr? A Rebbe is eigen an Nozer na Moil? A Rebbe is a Lekus. Und b'shas da a Helem af a Lekus, da a Helem af a Rebbe. I'll translate. First of all, Schwenzelach, 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 I think you'll all have to translate yourselves. There's many ways to translate. You know, you could say fools, idiots, but there's also sharper words that I don't want to use right here. But basically, it's a very derogatory term. It's when you tell somebody you're an idiot. So he said it 3 times. What do you think? A Rebbe is eyes, a nose, and a mouth. That's a Rebbe. A Rebbe is alakus. He's godliness. He's Eish Elikim. And when there's a helem, there's a concealment on Elikim, on a godliness, there's a helem on the Rebbe. The Shchinta Begalusa, there's a helem on the Rebbe. I just want you to think of these words. People start talking, Megushim Dika ways. A helem, there's a helem. A helem does not mean there's a shinui. It's a helem. And the Rebbe is aligned with, if the Eibush is in goals, the Rebbe is in goals. So Gimel Tammuz is a helem. And finally, one more story. Same Tzemach Tzedek was holding Yechidus. Rabbi Hillel would always go last in Yechidus because Rabbi Hillel, as you know, had his own Chassidim, so to speak. He had many students. So he was last in Yechidus because he asked questions for himself and also asked questions for his own Talmidim. So Yechidus was late at night. Rabbi Hillel did his Yechidus. He asked all the Shilas. The Tzemach Tzedek answered. And it's over. The Yechidus is over. And Rabbi Hillel is not moving. He's not budging. Tzemach Tzedek looks at him and says, Vos noch? What else? What do you want? So Rabbi Hillel says, to hear a Maimer Chassidus. He wanted to hear a Maimer. So he tells the Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, 3 o'clock in the morning, Vil had a Maimer for Rebbe. The Rebbe smiled and said, Those manim kavurim. There's scheduled times when we say Maimonim, not 3 o'clock in the morning. And the Tzemach Tzedek stood up and walked out of the Yechidus. Rabbi Hillel went out, and remember, Chassidim then, when there was Yechidus night, the ones that went to Yechidus didn't go to sleep. They Farbrenged all night. So they sat and Farbrenged. They continued Farbrenging. Lo and behold, what happens? An hour later, 4 o'clock in the morning, or something like that, the Tzemach Tzedek returns, sits down, puts on a gartla, kapot, and says a Maimer Chassidus. So they say that the Chassidim Farbrenged afterwards, as a Rebbe geht kemel nicht avek. He may for a second go somewhere. The Rebbe never has a kpeda on Chassidim. Chas v'sholem, a Chassid has a kpeda on the Rebbe, so he creates a helem. But if you believe in the Rebbe and you don't leave, the Rebbe will return. You cannot give up. You probably all learned in Chassidus, there's a moshel of a Schwindeltrepp. You ever hear Schwindeltrepp? It's called a spiral staircase. It's a Baal Shem Tov's moshel. It's a Meredika moshel. He says a spiral staircase. There's a regular staircase where you walk up the steps. It could be many steps, but you see the destination. By a spiral staircase, you save a lot of room, but you don't walk up straight. Every time you walk, you have to make a circle. And you have to turn your back to the destination. The higher you go, you still have to turn your back. To the point when you're about to reach the pinnacle, the top, where are you facing? You don't see the top. You face with your back to the other direction. And many people think, I've made no progress. But you're right by the top. You just don't see it. So the Baal Shem Tov says, and Chassidus explains, we have to see it through. Just because we don't always see the destination right there, it could be right an inch away, but you can't see it. Your eyes are blocked. You're blinded, whatever it is. The Rebbe gave us marching orders. Deira Shvi, we are the Deira Geula. Nothing has changed. There's been setbacks, yes. There's been a helem, yes. No one's denying it. Now we have this challenge. But especially Bochim, who don't have any daigas outside of learning Torah and davening and doing mitzvahs and being Chassidish Bochim to the Rebbe, dedicated to the Rebbe, have to hold on to the Yetzel Melchemes Beis David. And when we have a challenge like now, to say, I will do whatever it takes to keep marching. History is a marathon. You know, marathons, some of them are like, they call them relay races. It's not one person running the marathon. Avram Avinu ran only in his tkufa. Yitzchak in his tkufa. Yaakov in his tkufa. Asar, Rivka, Rachel, Leah in their tkufa. Moshe in his. Every generation is carried the baton. You know, a baton. And passed it to the next generation. We are now the Der Ikvis of the last generation. That's what the Rebbe told us. We are given the baton. We're anonas al gaba anok. We're midgets, small people compared, but we carry with us when we stand on the shoulders of giants, 3,800 years of giants. And when you have their kayach, you can see further than them. A midget is very short, but you put him on the shoulders of a giant, he sees further. So we're charged to carry the baton another inch, another 2 inches. We don't know what it will be that will tip the scale. But to hold on, as we're going to say, V'hisham delanu, coming Yud Aleph Nissen, make the Rebbe proud, and say, we will not disappoint you. All the Mesiris Nefesh that you, the Rebbe, and the Rabbein before you, invested their Belev and Nefesh, blood, sweat, and tears, is not Rachmana Litzlan in vain. Because we will take your keiches, your hiros, will be your arms and legs, will be your mouthpiece, as the Rebbe told us to be, and we will share with anyone we can your words. Words of betochen, words of amunah, words of teira, mitzvahs, hafotzas achsidis, sheva mitzvahs b'neiach, and ultimately the biggest word of all, the psuras ha'geula, that otot, higiz mangulaschem, all the expressions that Rebbe said, im dohachin kulchem, all we have to do is open the eyes, the world is ready. And now look, the world is ready. The world is receptive because they're not distracted. Nobody can tell you, call me tonight because I have to go to my job. Nobody's going to their business. They can't tell you that now. And the point is that we have an opportunity and ability to mamish be the best possible chassidim, the best possible soldiers. The Eibusher zal benchen, and again I say, zal kayetzim al-chemes beis David. The Rebbe Rashab says, "Kesev get krisis leishte." What does that mean? He says, you tear yourself up from all taivas of Elam Hazeh. We're not connected to Elam Hazeh. Elam Hazeh is something that does not control us. We're not meshubated. That's how the Rebbe Rashab teaches it. Especially Bochrim have that ability. Today, the whole world is not meshubet to Gashmis. They suddenly recognize it doesn't have any strength. So we should be zeicher. It says, Soldaten darfen sein gesund, that every person on earth should be completely healthy and healed, in the fullest possible way. The rest of us should have no aggravation. Families should not have to be davening and praying every second for all the different chelim around. It should be a complete refuah, pratis, refuah klalis for everyone individually and for everyone in general. I can't read all the names. Unfortunately, there's a lot of them. So we have to be mechaven. And for the rest of us, the Eibusher should protect us that the lechatchila shouldn't come. And we should get through this challenge as quickly as possible. And b'nissen nigalu, b'nissen hasidin ligal. It's a month of geula. It's a month of nitzchias, a month of nisim. We say the nosi every day. Beis Nissan. We have Yud Aleph Nissan. We have Yud Gimel Nissan. It's a month full of nisiyas, especially Yud Aleph Nissan for us. But all of them are one thing, and we should take a march b'nissen nigla b'nissen hasidin ligal. That the Rebbe always would say the name of the Frierdiker Rebbe, L'shon haba b'Yerushalayim, doesn't mean haba. You don't have to wait till next year. It means now, but automatically we'll already be L'shon haba. And there's no question that we hold on to the Rebbe's promise to us. Nothing wavers. On the contrary, it's only stronger than ever. It should all of you should be zeichet to be real chayolim. Chassi Yerushalayim Lamden, Chayoli Beis David, and Beis David to march and lead us all to the Geula, Hamitis Vashlema Malkeinu, the Rebbe Beresham, reunited in the physical sense of the word, the Shamas Begufim Dala Matam Asara Tfochim, Uhu Yigolenu.
Amen. A großen Yashakayach.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Rabbi Jacobson.